Hey, good morning, everybody. Before I get started, I just want to give a shout out to both the Sacramento Youth Mental Health Group and the Bay Area Creative. I mean, what an amazing way to start the day. I mean, it was engaging, it was entertaining, and it was inspiring. And I know for me, speaking in front of groups, it could be nerve-wracking at times. And it was a way that actually uplifted me and made me feel a little more comfortable in my own skin so that I could be up here presenting today. So thank you, appreciate it, and appreciate everything you're doing to advocate in our community. So my name's Ryan Eisenberg. I'm the CEO of the Children's Health Council. Today what we want to do is give a little background on who we are at CHC and then introduce something called our Ravenswood Wellness Partnership. And then with that, I'm going to facilitate a conversation with two amazing friends and colleagues that are critical to this Ravenswood Wellness Partnership. Before I do that, I want to share a little story of my connection with Elizabeth. So about 8 or 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to attend a conference. At the time, I was a school leader. And Elizabeth spoke, and she shared her journey and her story. It was in the infancy of what Breaking Barriers was becoming, and I was engaged with her passion to her own experiences and her call to action in creating greater access and creating one system. And it really resonated with me. And flashing forward to where I am today, now leading the Children's Health Council, one of the things I said is we have to connect back with Elizabeth. We need to be part of this movement. And it's incredible to look around this room today and see how many people are engaged in this and how far we've come as a state and the opportunity that lies ahead of us. We're in this moment of great change right now. And with that comes some disruption, but it also comes great opportunity. So I want to thank Elizabeth and all the work that you've done. And I want to thank everybody for being here today and allowing us to speak. So the Children's Health Council was founded 70 years ago by an incredible person. Dr. Esther B. Clark had a vision. She was a pediatrician in the Bay Area, and she really believed in two core principles: that all kids deserved access to care and have their needs met, and that care is best done when we consider a person in their whole totality. That if we work in integrated system and across professional expertise, that we're going to be able to better empower people into the future. Today, we're tasked with moving her vision forward. And we're tasked with creating opportunity and empowerment in the young people that we serve in our community. Our expertise within CHC is really the cross-section between learning differences and wellness. We understand that people are dynamic, and everybody's complex, and that we have to think of people in whole person in order to help empower them into the future. All of our programs are designed with that at heart, and whether it's our Esther B. Clark schools, where we use the model of collaborative inquiry and surround young people and engage young people in their own educational future, or our comprehensive assessments in our Catherine T. Harvey Center. We work towards understanding a person and everything that makes that person special so that we can help them have more opportunity. Like a lot of organizations in this room, we're really proud of the work we do and the number of people that we serve and how we're helping our community. At the same time, we recognize that we need to be critical of that, and we need to understand what's really happening out in the communities that we're part of and how best to continue to enhance ourselves into the future. So with that, we have a core belief in partnerships and understanding that we're stronger together and understanding that many of us can come together and work cross systems to make sure we're providing better care. So with that, we're going to talk about the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership. So first, Ravenswood is, for those that don't know, East Palo Alto and East Menlo Park. It is about 2.5 square miles in the Bay Area. If we look at the Ravenswood School District, which is just one of the partners within our program, as a snapshot of who's in the community, there's about 1,400 students, 89% of which are low income. 43% are homeless or housing insecure, 99% of color. We also knew that, and I think everybody's aware of these statistics, that access to care is grossly underrepresented and not enough youth are accessing the care that's available to them. Elizabeth spoke about that in her remarks, and some of the youth panel talked about that we need to make care more accessible and remove some of those barriers. We also knew that there were a lot of passionate organizations working within that community already. And so how can we as a collection of organizations come together to enhance the work we're already doing and to make sure we're overcoming those barriers to create greater access to care? So in 2018, the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership was established. Now, the goal of the partnership was understanding that we needed to build on trust and relationships. We had to eliminate barriers, and we had to ensure service availability. We also wanted to make sure we brought services closer to the community, have services available in the community in which people live. Ultimately, how do we create access? It was built upon 3 pillars: coordination of care, increased capacity, and ultimately increased access. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers today and facilitate a conversation so we could talk about the evolution of that work. So with me is Jessi and Ramsey. Now, if you both could take a minute and just introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm Dr. Ramsey Khasho. I am a psychologist by training. I've been a psychologist for over 20 years, and I am proudly the Chief Clinical Officer at Children's Health Council and a very proud member of the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership team.
I'm nervous, my mic is hot. Hi, I'm Jess Misslin. I'm the Vice President of Program and Engagement at Pacific Foundation Services. We're a philanthropic advisory firm in San Francisco. And as a part of that work, I also serve as a Senior Program Officer with the Sandhill Foundation, which is a place-based funder focusing in San Mateo County, a little bit in Santa Clara. And in that role, I oversee our wellness funding and get to work with these fabulous folks.
Thank you both. Now, Jessi, in order to innovate, in order to create change, very often we need partners within the community to help support that initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sandhill Foundation and how you came to prioritize mental health and launch the Wellness Partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sandhill Foundation was founded by Susan Ford Dorsey in the late 90s, and it's a personal passion and funding priority for Susan and her late husband, Tom, who founded it. So funding youth mental health has been a part of what we've done since inception. After about 2 decades of funding direct services, on-campus counseling programs, crisis response, one-on-one treatment, and group therapy, it was around 2016, 2017 where the board and foundation leadership kind of wanted to do more, and we embarked on a learning journey, listening tour, whatever you want to call it, where we reached out to partners like Ramsey and other folks who had been funding in the space for a long time to hear from them about what they thought the system really needed, recognizing that there was increased and heightened need across really all the populations in the region. So what we heard really clearly is something that you've been saying this whole time, that collaboration and partnership and breaking down of silos and more coordinated systems is really going to help meet the needs of youth. And this was before COVID. So in 2018, we launched the Wellness Partnership Initiative, which is a funding initiative for the foundation, but really it's all about just getting the dollars and a commitment out to the folks in the field doing the work and funding partnership. Like, it's not, we have very flexible structures to our grants, and we are really all about just funding the relationship building that has already been spoken about as the key to this work. So when we launched in 2018, we opened an RFP. We weren't really sure what we were going to get. We got about 30 different proposals, I think encompassing something like 70 organizations and different agencies. We funded a cohort initially of 5. And the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership was a part of that group. And really, they're all different approaches. And over the course of the last 5 years, we've been able to see what that flexibility and upstream investment in prevention and early intervention can really do. And yeah, it's been a really amazing learning that's continued.
Thank you. Ramsey, can you talk a little bit about how Ravenswood Wellness Partnership started, or the roots of the partnership?
Absolutely. So our, CHC's work in Ravenswood began prior to the partnership. We launched thanks to the Sandhill Foundation also, who have been longtime supporters of CHC. In about 2014, CHC launched its CHC Ravenswood initiative. We did a brief needs assessment at that time. Found that the community were really desiring more support for the adults who were working with the youth in the system. So we had a team that were providing consultations, trainings, and workshops to the adults, teachers, parents, other nonprofits to support them in understanding the needs of youth and the behavioral health needs of youth. At around four years of doing the work, our team kept coming back to us and said, you know, part of our consultation work and part of working, doing these workshops and trainings, our recommendation is often to refer to behavioral health for youth to get support. And there isn't really anybody to refer them to in the community. And so what they found was they were having to refer people in the community to outside organizations outside of the community, oftentimes to affluent communities who really didn't understand the needs, the unique needs of the community itself. And fortuitously, that was the same year in about 2018 where the Wellness Partnership Grant was proposed. And so we thought we really need to look into this. And so we pulled a couple of partners together. We said, let's do a needs assessment. Let's listen to the community, hear what's going on in the community. So we launched a pretty robust needs assessment. We put in about 150 hours of interviewing people within the community, youth, parents, teachers, providers, and gathered a lot of information. Not surprisingly, the mental health system of care in the community was complicated. It was very, very difficult for parents to navigate. A lot of families were falling out of the system because of the complicated way the system was running. And so all of that research, we were looking into best practices as well, thinking about what are the best practices within community mental health. And as Ryan mentioned earlier, we found three needs in the community. One was capacity. There wasn't enough capacity in the community, and our youth spoke about that today as well. They needed more providers in the community, and the fact that a lot of community members were referred outside the community was an equity of access issue that we were deeply concerned about. The other was coordination. At the time of our needs assessment, there were 60 nonprofits just in East Palo Alto and Eastern Menlo Park alone. We discovered that many of the nonprofits, they didn't know about each other. They weren't referring to each other. Worst case scenario, we found that a number of families were receiving duplicate care from different providers, but because there wasn't coordination, we didn't know that the families were receiving the same services across organizations. And when you think about that from the prospect of not enough services to go around, that was a concern. And of course, access was a big challenge, that the community didn't know about these nonprofit providers providing really wonderful services. We knew that even if we build the services, that there will always be access issues. So transportation issues, stigma issues, et cetera. So based on these findings, we went back to our initial partners and to some other partners, and we said, let's come together and figure out how do we change the system of care in this community to enhance it and better it for the youth in the community. Who's in? And we are now a community of 12 strong partnerships working together. We have an audacious goal of radically changing the mental health system of care for youth in East Palo Alto, so that no child falls through the cracks. And that's how we got started.
Yeah, and I think with any partnership, there's always evolution. That when we start something, it maybe isn't what it becomes, as we kind of have learning lessons. Ramsey, can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the partnership and where we are today?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we are a partner of 12 strong organizations. They're all up there on the slide, across many stakeholders, and that's really critical. So we have the school district, we have after-school programs like the Boys and Girls Club, we have nonprofits, and it's critical that we had representation across all stakeholders. Proudly today, the 11 partners are still very actively involved. I'm so glad, Dr. Nikki, you presented on the importance of relationships and trust. I would say one of the biggest things that we were able to accomplish was deepening our relationships with one another, deepening that trust so that we can work collaboratively with one another. We started working twice a month at the beginning and now continue to meet monthly, and we talk about what are the challenges, what are the solutions, how can we work more closely together, how can we develop new programs to benefit the youth of the community. We were able to establish a universal referral form so that it's not complicated. We have a simple system where all of the partners are referring using the same form. Yes, the district, there's a best practice in schools right now called coordination of service teams, cost centers. And out of the partnership work, the Ravenswood City School District established cost centers at each of their schools and the district. These are forums in which the school and all of the providers come together. They talk about youth who are high risk, and they coordinate and collaborate around what are the best services and supports to offer that youth. And that's something that we're doing collaboratively and strongly. One of our kind of hallmark accomplishments in the last couple of years is in our capacity building. So we've all done really deep work in the community trying to recruit bilingual, bicultural staff to serve the community. But as you all know, that's a little bit difficult these days. And one of the things that we established is a Ravenswood Wellness Partnership Training Consortium. So we have established a training program in the community where we train every year 3 doctoral and master's level students. It is a way to increase capacity in the community. It's a way to bring students in to do deep community mental health work. And that has really helped our community capacity efforts. And of course, with Access, we're doing a lot of really great work. CHC actually launched a clinic in East Palo Alto. It is in the heart of East Palo Alto in the shopping district there, very accessible to the community. And it's a shared space where all of our partners can come and do work there as well. We have a web page so that everyone knows that we're working together. One of the things that we found is when one of our organizations build a relationship with a consumer, just by virtue of this web page and the fact that they see that we're working together as partners, it automatically builds trust with all the other providers when we have to refer to one another. So we continue to do really good work. There are certainly some challenges, but we're really proud of the 5-year programming that we've done together.
Thanks. I was really proud of opening the office space in Ravenswood because I think, to speak to Ramsey's point earlier about equity, it's important that services are available in the community that people live in. And I think that really speaks to the growth of the program over the last 5 years. Yeah. You also referenced Dr. Nikki and some of her conversation earlier on relationships. And I wanted to build on that a little bit because I think anytime we're designing programs, we need to engage the stakeholders involved. Can you talk a little bit about the community engagement and what that's looked like?
Yeah. So we have spent, it takes a lot of time, folks, to build deep, trusting partnerships. One of the things that we learned in the community too, because of the volume of nonprofits that were in the community is, and when we listened to the community, they were very tentative about this partnership, and we were wondering what was going on. And so they were sharing their experiences of, particularly in traditionally under-resourced communities, a lot of really well-meaning nonprofits mostly come into the community. They get short-term funding, a year, 2 years. They come in, do some really fantastic work, and the funding dries up, and they leave the communities. The communities, and when we talk about communities and consumers, we're not only talking about the people in the community, but the providers there who have been providing services for a long time. So they end up feeling a lot of distrust. They feel abandoned. They feel used by the system. So we committed as a partnership group that if we were going to launch this partnership, that we really needed to do it for the long term and sustainable for the people. And part of that was deepening our relationships and deepening our work together. We knew that we couldn't just be siloed systems trying to work together to implement new systems, that we really needed to have deep partnerships where we understood each other. Again, I couldn't have said it better than Dr. Nikki, wherever you are. You said it so beautifully. And it's really about deep relationships. It's about understanding each other. It's about understanding the values and the limitations of what each organization is able to bring to the table. It's about getting to know one another beyond just the work that we do in the community. So we know each other as people and as humans. And thanks to the Sandhill Foundation, I have to give them props. In addition to the funding for the services, they also earmark every year funds for a retreat for the partners and team building and self-care. And that has been critical for us to come together as a community to ensure that, the work that we do is hard, it is ripe for burnout, and these give us opportunities to come together to deepen our relationships and to help ourselves through the difficult work.
Yeah, and I think that's a great statement of both living the values that you project and then caring about partnerships. To stay on the partnership theme, Jessi, so as a funder, what do you see as critical variables to successful partnerships?
I'm going to try from right here. It's very powerful, Mike. Sorry, Ryan, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, what do you see as critical variables to successful partnerships?
Oh, man. I'm just going to pick up where Ramsey left off. I know we just keep saying it, but this importance of relationship and seeing each other as humans doing this work together is critical. From our funder perspective, it's been really important for us to be behind the scenes. This is not about us. This is about providing the resources to allow the folks doing the work to get to know each other, to really understand what each other are going through. I think that openness and willingness of time sharing is critical. There's a lot of meetings, like a lot of meetings, I feel, for how much meetings there is. And I think that reciprocity, knowing what folks have to stop doing to be able to partner, is really critical. Making a long-term commitment, which has been said already, but I can't repeat it enough. I think for the foundation, it's really important that we've sort of loosely called this a 10-year initiative, but we funded these organizations before and we'll fund after that 10 years is up. But knowing that there is this runway focused on building relationships for a solid decade is critical. And then I would say really centering community and centering youth. We've heard each one of our organizations that are a part of the cohort, not just the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership, but the 4 others that work in our region, each have youth advisory boards or advisory groups, whatever acronym they call them, to make sure that their voice and their perspective is centered. One thing that we heard during one of our retreats that we held last year from some of these folks was that, this is more than a poster on a counselor office in a high school. This is about being able to meet the kids where they're at and respond and know who the right people to refer are. So I could go on and on. There's so many important variables, but I think at the core of it, it's time and people.
Could you talk more about, I think it's my mic. Could you talk more about the... Two mics. Can you talk more about, so you've referenced a couple of times the multi-year grants that you're invested for 10 years, your grant cycles are 4 years, you've invested in us and 4 other projects. Could you talk about that decision-making process and go a little deeper about why 4-year cycles and a 10-year commitment?
We'll get the sound right at the end of this. It'll be perfect. Yeah, definitely. I think, Sandhill is a place-based funder. I think it's really important to note that. We're focused on San Mateo County. We believe as a part of that our goal, our mission is to build capacity. Like for the folks that are committed to San Mateo County, we want to provide flexible funding and funding over the long term that allows them to respond to need. So these are as unrestricted as we can make them, but obviously tied to mental health and and wellness. And so the 10-year outlook allows for sort of guardrails, and we know that there's goals that we're trying to make. We work really closely from the outset of this initiative with our evaluation partners, Learning for Action, which is a consulting firm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that partnership was really less about, metrics and measurements and making sure all the data was there. It was more about building capacity for the cohort. They've provided technical assistance grants, strategic planning, project support. And, I think it's just about, at the end of the day, Sandhill Foundation is a relatively small foundation in Silicon Valley where there's tons of money to be given, and we recognize that our support is leveraged best by partnerships as a funder. So we want to walk that walk with the grants that we're what we're supporting in the community. So it can't be short term; it has to be flexible, and it will have a bigger impact that way.
So I just want to add, how many people here are from nonprofit organizations? If you can raise your hands. And how many of you struggle with funding insecurity? It's something that's real to nonprofits, and one of the things that I've really valued about our work with the Sandhill Foundation is that they really understand that it takes time, and in order to do deep systems work, you need longer term funding. And so we've been really grateful for that we knew the funding was there. We know that what we implemented today was going to be long lasting. And then the key too was flexibility as well. As a funder, the Sandhill Foundation has been extremely flexible. They understand how hard this work is. I remember when we launched our first year, and it was actually the first year of the pandemic after we did our needs assessment. We were gung-ho about all the things that we were going to implement, and of course we couldn't implement a lot because of the pandemic. And I sheepishly came back to Jessi and said, and she's like, so how is it going? I'm like, well, you know, we have all these ideas. We've established what we want to do, but COVID has kind of thwarted our efforts. But we've built really, really strong relationships, and we have good partnerships, and everybody's at the table, and we're talking about what we're going to do when the crisis ends. And we've actually supported each other through the pandemic, helping each other out in terms of how do you get through this really difficult time. And Jessi said, that's great. That's a success. She was so excited about what we were able to establish. And as a funder, she understood that there are times where there are seasons in which you're doing a lot of great work, and there are seasons in which you're really focusing on planning, and there are seasons in which you're really focusing on relationship building. That's the kind of funding that we need for one system of care.
Well, if I could add to that, I would also say that the reason we as a foundation support partnership is recognizing that there's innovation there, and the training consortium that Ramsey talked about earlier was not something we saw coming. We didn't know that that would evolve from this work, and quite frankly do it quickly. 5 years, like, that's pretty awesome. And I think that's another reason why we position ourselves like this, and what our strategy is all about is to allow for those folks that see the need to respond to the need, and then build programs to solve for those problems. Workforce was something that felt very daunting to us. We'd sort of like put it over there. We can't handle that. We're too small. And then finding our own solutions is kind of amazing.
Thank you both. Could you both talk about the barriers that we've experienced along the way and how we overcame them?
Oh gosh, I was looking at the workshops for this conference and saw that Elizabeth is going to be hosting a HIPAA and FERPA training at the last day, and I'm so excited for that to happen. And to attend that meeting, that's been a big challenge. You know, HIPAA and FERPA exist to protect consumers. It's a good thing, and consumer rights and confidentiality. However, it has created a barrier for us as partners where we really want to support many of the, we have a lot of the same consumers in common. We want to support them collectively. We want to support them efficiently and communicate efficiently and effectively. However, some of these laws that are meant to protect consumers have become barriers for us as partners to really connect quickly and really for the ultimate betterment of young people that we're serving. And so our pipe dream is to have a platform that all of the providers, a safe, secure platform, then all the providers can communicate about our consumers. We can track the consumer, see which organization they're being served in. We have been talking to attorneys. We have been talking to lots of folks, and we still don't have clear answers. And it's a barrier. It slows us down from serving people. And so one of the things I'm looking forward to in the workshop is how could we do this? How could we do this better?
Mine's a little more high level. I would say that when we first had our RFP and we got back, or we sort of approved the first 5 projects in the initial cohort, the organizations looked different than they do today. The partners who are willing to be there and make a commitment. I think the commitment is a really, like, we're here for the long haul. We're interested in long-term funding, but organizations have so many different challenges that they're juggling. If they can't prioritize partnership, that's fair. But like, if you can't prioritize it, then, you know, it's hard to find the time to make it happen, and doing it part way is not going to get you across the finish line. So we've seen partners, you know, that need to, I don't want to say drop out of the initiative, but focus on other things, and that's fine. But it's been a challenge to just have this kind of cohesion and consistency across the folks participating. The other thing I would mention from our point of view is we fund youth mental health and adolescent mental wellness, and our focus has always been on youth and parents and caregivers, and that sort of network around young people was never explicitly our focus. But early on, we were hearing pretty resoundingly from all of the partners that stigma was less an issue for young people, which, like, can I get a snap for that? I'm so proud of your generation, quite frankly, for embracing mental health. But the stigma was a bigger issue for parents and caregivers, and that meant we needed to pivot and kind of be more flexible around who was receiving the services or the trainings that our partners were providing. So parents and caregivers coming into the mix is a huge opportunity. I don't want to call it a barrier, but it was tricky at first.
Great, thank you. And I also think, strong partnerships, we've talked a lot about trust, but they also take sacrifice and understanding that we have to allocate time and resources to make a partnership successful. And I think the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership's done an excellent job at embracing that and talking through that and talking through the challenges that come with that. Ramsey, we've talked a little bit about the shortages. It's come up in a couple of the other sessions, and we mentioned it earlier today. Could you talk about what the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership's done to address capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a little bit more about our training program. So CHC and our partner, Stanford Children's Health, have a history of partnering around training programs. We have a doctoral internship program consortium, and we also have a psychiatry fellowship program. So we know training programs well. And so when we were grappling with the shortage in East Palo Alto, the natural thing that we brought forward was this idea of a training program, and everyone was very excited about it. Because we were all experiencing the same struggle, which is recruiting people, particularly community mental health. I've heard from my higher education colleagues that a lot of graduates now are really drawn to a lot of the fancy tech behavioral health industries and companies, and less are being drawn to community mental health. So we thought, let's take a look at this. Let's do this. So we went back to our partners. There were two other partners who joined us in the endeavor, Child Mind Institute and Cassie, a local nonprofit that does school-based work. And every year now we train 3 students. We're hoping to grow that over time as the capacity needs increase. Doctoral master's level students, they are able to rotate through our program, so they get an experience doing outpatient mental health through our outpatient clinic. They do school-based work and get school-based experience, and then they do after-school groups through the Boys and Girls Club and CMI. And so it's a really wonderful way to bring particularly individuals who are BIPOC and in graduate school to the community, have them experience community mental health services in a really deep way and understand and see the value and the deep, meaningful work that we do in community mental health. And there was a secondary goal too. The hope here too is that, once an individual gets trained with us at our community and with our organizations, the hope and the secondary gain is that that'll create a pipeline for future hiring. So that at some point in time, either later in their training or when they're done, they would have such a positive experience with us that they would come back and want to join one of our organizations. This has actually recently happened. A student from our cohort last year is on her internship this year and recently sent me an email saying that she's interested in doing her postdoctoral fellowship with us. So already the pipeline is working and we're really excited about it. So just to get some outcomes, last year was our first year that we launched the training program. The students provided 1,500 hours of free service in exchange for, of course, supervision and training in the community, and about 500 of those hours were direct services with youth in the community. So we're really excited about the work that we're doing. We also heard from the community too that there were some individuals in the community who were in graduate school historically and have wanted to come back and to do their training in the community, but there wasn't an opportunity to do training in their own community that they grew up in. And this also creates a pipeline for them to really come full circle to serve the community that they grew up with. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing.
The other thing I just want to quickly highlight, and Ramsey sort of mentioned it briefly, and this connects to the youth that were up speaking earlier, is all the services are free to the community, and making sure that cost isn't a barrier. And I think that's another highlight of the program, because again, I think when we go into the design process, it's how do we eliminate as many barriers as possible, and how do we then coordinate care to create that access. Could you also talk about our vision for the future? Because we continue to evolve the program. We want to see it continue to adapt to changing community needs and also our learning lessons. So talk a little bit about our vision and where we see ourselves in the future.
Sure. So we're really excited about everything that's happening at the state and county level through CYBHI. The hope is that, we know that we have limited time, although very extended time with the Sandhill Foundation funding that we've been very grateful for. Our hope is that a lot of the work that we're doing, if not just part, will be funded by some of the CYBHI efforts. And the hope is that that will help us with even longer term sustainability over time. So That's one of our hopes in terms of continuing to do the really great work that we're doing in the community. Our hope too is what we're doing today, is that our partnership can be a model for how successful partnerships can work. And that, in some way, that our programming and our partnership can be replicated in other communities. It will always be different if we are truly intent and earnest in our desire to really listen to the needs of the community and understand the power of community and their voice. Our partnership should look different community to community, but if we kind of uphold some of the basic tenets that has really helped our partnership thrive, our hope that people can take that as a model of partnership well into the future.
Yeah, I would echo what Ramsey said and just add that for the foundation, our vision for San Mateo County is right now we have just brought in a new group in the northern part of the county. And so we have 6 different partnerships working in their own regional areas. Our vision is that all of them sort of eventually think of themselves as one large county-based network. And as the larger streams of funding comes through the system of care, they're positioned to accept it and allocate it as they see fit, and partner with school systems and other governmental systems. We keep talking about systems change and what that means, and I really think it's incremental, but it's relationship based, and our hope is that this network of organizations and multi-sector partners are positioned to receive extra funding and respond and hit the ground running, as opposed to have funding come in from other sources and need to take time to build the relationships. They're there, the network's there, they can respond to the need. There are intentional geographic pockets in San Mateo County. For those of you that aren't familiar, there's some areas that are very affluent and some that are not, and there's some that have tons of nonprofit infrastructure in place and some that don't. So we're trying to position the cohorts to be in those regions so that they can respond to the needs based on what isn't there and what needs to be built. So that's our long-term goal, is to see one network as opposed to 6. We just had a retreat, and one of Ramsey's colleagues called that out himself. I was like, yay, that's all of our visions. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think it's partnerships with the Sandhill Foundation and wonderful funders that help us innovate and invest resources in making partnerships like this work. But at the same time, in thinking of sustainability and thinking of future, could you talk a little bit about your thoughts around the bridges that we need to build between foundations and government funding or other funding sources?
Oof. I think this is a complicated question, obviously, with lots of different answers, but for us and where we sit, we really see the flexibility of the private sector funding as its strength. We can be there while the systems to just distribute the amount of money that the government has can be built, recognizing that we can respond to sort of early needs and help build the network. And like I said before, so that when the government funding streams are available, they can really hit the ground running. Not to repeat myself, but in terms of the consortium and training work that we didn't expect at the outset of the initiative, that's another place for private foundation dollars to be able to fund growth and innovation and be flexible, where our government colleagues don't have that same level of flexibility. So I think we each have a role to play, and we're not going away when you do receive those big grants from the government. We'll still be there, and I think there's still need for both to be able to meet the needs that are not going away either. This is about, we're not solving a problem, we're just building a better system. One of the things that we've been saying since the get-go is that we would be successful, or we'd see the work as successful, if a family and with a kid in need were able to access their support they needed and weren't re-traumatized just by accessing those services. The service, just to access services, can be really re-traumatizing, and you're talking to 6 different people, telling the same stories to them and repeating what's really troubling and where you're at emotionally at a time of need. It's just the most backward system. And if we can, if children and youth and their families are getting the services they need without even realizing that they've been assessed or been had an intake happen, and there's a fluency around the people that are there, I think we've accomplished something pretty great.
All right, so people in this room today might be exploring similar partnership models or looking to build similar type models within their own communities. What advice would you have on how to begin that or how to engage in that process?
Yeah, two things stand out for me. A couple of months ago, I was at the California Alliance conference in San Diego in September, and Michael Tubbs, who's the former mayor of Stockton, was one of the keynote speakers, and he said something immensely powerful that really captures what's necessary for partnerships. And he says, the answers we are seeking to so many problems are likely found in places where people are most marginalized. And I think it speaks volumes to the fact that we really need to be systems that listen to the people. We need to be community-centric. We need to be youth-centric. We can no longer come into systems with our hats of expertise, pontificating about what we believe the community needs. And we really need to understand that communities know what they need. We need to elevate their voices. We need to listen to them, and we need to build systems around what they know is best for themselves and their own lived experience. So, and the Sandhill Foundation has been really incredible, holding all of the wellness partnerships accountable for this, asking us, in our yearly reports, what have you done to center youth voices? What have you done to listen to the parents of the community? What have you done to engage the community in the development of your programs and partnerships? And so really, really key to meeting communities where they're at and really listening to communities, I think, is fundamental and critical. The other thing is really taking a risk to be that leader who is going to bridge the partnerships. CHC took the lead on the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership programming. I remember when we first shared with Jessi and the Sandhill Foundation our team of 12, they said, that's a lot of people. And there was certainly, a little bit of warning around, engaging this large group of individuals. And we said that we wanted to take a risk. We believed in the funding. We believed in our capacity to work collaboratively together. All it took was one organization to step forward and to take a lead and to put their hand across the table to say, let's work together, and other people joined in. And we're glad that we did. It was long, it was painstaking at times, but it's incredibly rewarding to see the partnership and the system of care that we've been able to establish and the steps that we've been able to make in order to better the health and wellness of youth in our community. So be that leader in the community, be that organization that takes that risk to pull people together to create partnerships.
Yes. One thing that's common through all of our collaboratives that we're funding is that there is a dedicated position at that lead agency that's focused on coordination. I mean, we're talking about partnerships, we're talking about collaboration, but if you don't dedicate time and someone's focused professionally to that work, it makes it really hard to actually see change through those partnerships. So whatever you can do to build that capacity at your organization, I would definitely recommend that. That seems like a key to success for our partners. I would also add, don't be afraid to reach out and just start building those connections between other people serving the same community that you're serving. Some of our other collaboratives are less strictly mental health focused and more out of school time, or more rec programs and after school programs, youth development folks that are working to integrate mental health and training around for their professionals. And they're folks that were all serving the same families in the same community. So it was about meeting the community where they were at and bringing mental health into that conversation. So it's not as difficult as we I think are sounding like it could be. It is really, I'm repeating myself again, but talking about building those relationships. And I would start by looking who else is serving the communities that you are in your region and your neighborhoods.
Thank you. And to start bringing this to a close, one of the reasons we approached Elizabeth and Breaking Barriers to talk about the Ravenswood Wellness Partnership is because we are in this great moment in the state right now of change. And through the CYPHI grants, if I got the acronym right, there's this opportunity to think of seismic change and doing things differently within the community. And some of the aspects within our program, whether it's our community health workers that help coordinate care and prevent barriers, are becoming things that may be reimbursable to all those nonprofits that are out there. And so there's opportunity to begin replicating models like this or building upon the successes that other organizations have had. And in the spirit of partnership, we think it's important to share those successes and those learning moments that we've had in order to push us all forward as we think of a new system of care and improve on the outcomes and enhance what we're doing in our communities. I want to thank Ramsey and Jessi for speaking in more detail about our program. I also want to thank Elizabeth for allowing us to speak today and being part of this amazing group, and appreciate all of you listening to the work that we're doing and excited about engaging with everybody over the next 3 days. Thank you.